Today, Iran and Israel are at war. Cities are under fire, missiles fill the skies, and the world is holding its breath. But what if I told you, these two nations were once allies? Not just a few decades ago, but for over 2,500 years. From a Persian king who freed the Jews, to decades of secret military partnerships, Iran and Israel shared centuries of peace, respect, and cooperation. So what happened? What turned ancient allies into bitter enemies? This is the forgotten history behind the Iran-Israel War of 2025. Our story begins more than 2,500 years ago, when a mighty empire and a defeated people first forged an extraordinary bond. In 539 BCE, Cyrus the Great, king of Persia, captured Babylon. Inside those walls lived the Jewish people, displaced and suffering after the fall of Jerusalem. But Cyrus did something unprecedented for a conqueror. He freed them. He allowed them to return to their homeland and even pledged resources to rebuild the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. The Jewish Bible calls him the Anointed of the Lord, a title of honor reserved for heroes. With Cyrus's decree, generations of Jewish exiles returned home. Yet many remained in Persia, building synagogues, farms, and businesses. For centuries thereafter, Jews lived not just peacefully, but with respect under Persian rule. Fast forward to the 7th century. Persia became a cornerstone of the Islamic world. Despite changes in empire and creed, its Jewish communities endured. Under the status of dhimmis, protected non-Muslims, they paid a head tax, yet retained religious freedom. They were traders, scribes, artisans. They raised families in Isfahan, Shiraz, Hamadan. When the Safavid dynasty emerged, cementing Twelver Shia Islam as Persia's faith, toleration persisted. Jewish life remained woven into the fabric of Persian society. Even as centuries passed, the bond, born from Cyrus's decree, remained steady, understated, but unbroken. By the 19th century, Jews still walked the bazaars of Tehran, Persian dialects on their tongues. They lived alongside Muslims and Zoroastrians. The ancient blood link, forged under Cyrus, still pulsed quietly in everyday life. In 1948, Israel became a reality. In much of the Arab and Muslim world, it was rejected or even outright denounced. But Iran, under the rule of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, charted its own course. In 1950, Iran became one of the first Muslim-majority nations to recognize Israel, albeit quietly. Behind closed doors, the relationship deepened. Israeli engineers were in Iranian factories, helping build roads and pipelines. Iranian oil powered Israeli refineries. At the same time, their spy agencies, Israel's Mossad and Iran's Savak, cooperated. They gathered intelligence, trained Kurdish rebels against Saddam Hussein, and spied on Arab nationalist regimes. These alliances were cloaked in secrecy but potent in action. It was an unusual partnership. Two nations united not by ideology, but by shared strategic interests. An anti-Arab axis, opposition to Soviet influence, and the desire to stabilize the region. This cooperation lasted until one of history's seismic shifts: the Iranian Revolution of 1979. The Shah's rule crumbled. Ayatollah Khomeini swept into power on a wave of anti-West, anti-monarchy fervor. He established the Islamic Republic. One of his first decisions was to sever ties with Israel, swiftly and completely. The former covert allies were now loud adversaries. Khomeini branded Israel the Zionist regime. He declared ultimate loyalty to the Palestinians and launched a campaign supporting militant groups. Hezbollah emerged in Lebanon. Hamas grew in Gaza. Both openly pledged to destroy Israel. For Iran, Israel became the little Satan. The United States was the great Satan. This ideological shift rewrote 2,500 years of muted friendship into outright hostility. It turned a state once aligned with Israel into its sworn enemy. But while public rhetoric changed sharply, the underlying geopolitical struggle didn't disappear, it simply shifted modes. From 1979 onward, a shadow war unfolded. Grave. Iran built its proxies. Hezbollah dug its rockets into Lebanon's hills. Hamas entrenched itself in Gaza. Islamic Jihad, the Popular Front, Yemen's Houthis, all echoed Tehran's message. Meanwhile, Israel struck covertly. Fighters bombed Iranian arms shipments in Syria. Agents allegedly assassinated Iranian nuclear scientists inside Iran. Cyber weaponry targeted Iranian infrastructure. Each side tested the other through deniable warfare, probing vulnerabilities, testing defenses. The shadow war simmered quietly for decades, always on the brink of breaking into the open, yet rarely crossing that line. Until 2025. In June of this year, the conflict escalated precipitously. Israel launched a sweeping military campaign, Operation Rising Lion, targeting Iranian nuclear and military installations deep within Iranian territory. Isfahan and Bushehr were struck. Command and control facilities and IRGC compounds were pulverized. Iran responded with calibrated but potent force. Hundreds of missiles, ballistic and cruise, along with swarms of drones, struck Israeli cities. Tel Aviv, Beersheba, Holon, power plants, train stations and civilian neighborhoods were damaged. Missiles hit Ramat Gan, Lod, even the Soroka hospital compound. Civilian casualties mounted on both sides. These were no proxy skirmishes. This was direct war. Diplomatic channels have spun into action. Major powers convened in Geneva. The US, EU and others urge restraint. The Red Cross and UN warned of humanitarian catastrophes. Yet hardline voices warn that returning to a frozen conflict is impossible now. So what happens next? Will this conflict spiral into regional war? Will Iran-Saudi tensions ignite? Could Hezbollah drag Lebanon into conflict? Will Russia or China intervene indirectly? Or could history surprise us again? Could diplomacy, like Cyrus's ancient olive branch, carve a path back from war? What remains clear is the power of history. For over 2.5 millennia, an unlikely bond connected Persia and Israel. Ancient friendship grew into medieval coexistence, into modern strategic alliance. Then, in a moment of revolution, it collapsed. Poignant, now, amid the flames of war, that buried history matters. Remembering it might one day guide us away from fire. Engaging. If this story resonated with you, subscribe for more deep history exploration.